All right, let's talk about that feeling, that incredibly frustrating feeling of being stuck. Today, we're going to dive into the neuroscience of why your brain actually fights you when you try to change. And, more importantly, we're going to lay out a science-backed plan to finally break free. You know the feeling, right? You've got a goal. You know exactly what you need to do. But when it comes time to actually do it, it feels like you're wading through cement. It's like you're in a battle with your own mind just to take one step forward, and you just end up stuck. Neuroscientists have this perfect analogy for this. Think about it. If you're driving a car and have no idea how the engine works, you're totally helpless when it breaks down on the side of the road. Well, your brain is the exact same way. If you don't understand its basic mechanics, how can you possibly fix it when it gets stuck in procrastination or stress? So, first things first, we gotta understand why this even happens. And here's the wild part. That feeling of being stuck, it's not a bug in your programming. It's actually a feature. It's your brain doing exactly what it's designed to do. See, your brain's number one job, above everything else, is to keep you safe. And to your brain, safe means familiar, predictable, known. Any real growth, any new goal, by definition, lives outside that comfort zone. So when you try to step out, your brain's immediate, instinctual reaction is to slam on the brakes. The main character in this whole drama is a brain system called the default mode network. The easiest way to think about it is as your brain's autopilot. It's the part that builds the story of you, who you are, what you do, all based on your past. And it will fight tooth and nail to keep that story consistent. In fact, that's the root of our very first major block. And this is where the real internal battle starts. Your brain has a story about who you are that's been reinforced for years, maybe decades. But that big new goal you have, it demands a new story, a totally new identity. And that creates a massive, massive conflict. So, to put it simply, the first reason we get stuck is an identity mismatch. The person you want to become is at odds with the person your brain thinks you are, and that autopilot system just hits the emergency stop button. Let's make this real. Say your goal is to write a book. Awesome. But if your default mode network has been telling the story for 20 years that I'm not a writer, I'm a procrastinator, well, that mismatch is gonna cause some serious friction. Your brain will literally sabotage you to stop you from doing things that contradict its sense of self. So what's the fix? It actually sounds almost too simple. You have to act as if. You know how you pretend to be asleep to actually fall asleep? It's the same idea. You have to consciously decide to identify as the person who's already done the thing. You start acting like the author, the business owner, whatever it is. That's how you begin to rewrite the brain's story. Okay, let's move on to the second blocker, and this one is way more sneaky. We often think we're afraid of failure, but a lot of the time we're actually afraid of what might happen if we succeed. Yeah, you heard that right. A subconscious fear of success is a huge driver of procrastination. Just think about it for a second. What new problems will your success create? Will you have more responsibility, more visibility? Will people start to judge you in a new way? Your brain hates that uncertainty. And here's the crucial thing. As long as those fears are just vague, shadowy feelings, they have all the power. The second you drag them out into the light, get really specific, and write them down, you start to take that power back. And there's some really cool neuroscience that explains why this works. When you name a fear, you activate your prefrontal cortex. That's the logical, rational CEO of your brain. And there's this seesaw relationship here. When the CEO's activity goes up, the activity in your amygdala, the brain's emotional panic button, goes down. You are literally calming your brain down just by labeling what's scaring you. Now for our third and final blocker. This one is a huge product of the world we live in today. We are constantly feeding our brains these tiny little rewards that completely kill our motivation for the big, important stuff. And this all comes down to something called cheap dopamine. These are the easy, zero-effort hits of that feel-good reward chemical. They're everywhere in our world, and they are silently destroying our drive. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Mindlessly scrolling through social media, binging another TV show, grabbing junk food, clicking add to cart. They're all designed for one thing, a quick, easy dopamine hit. But here's the thing. Dopamine doesn't care about your long-term goals. It just wants another hit of what you keep repeating. The analogy for this is perfect. If you're snacking on junk food all day long, you're never going to be hungry enough to cook a real nutritious meal. And if you're constantly feeding your brain these little dopamine snacks, it's never going to build up the hunger and drive to go after the big, difficult, but ultimately way more satisfying meal. So, okay, we've identified the three big blockers. So now what? How do we start to actively rewire our brains so we can not only overcome these things, but actually start to see the opportunities that we've been missing all along? This is where it gets really, really cool. So listen to this story. There was this famous, kind of weird experiment back in the 70s where scientists raised kittens in an environment where they could only see vertical lines. That's it. When the cats grew up and were put in a normal room, they were basically blind to anything horizontal. They would literally bump right into the seats of chairs and the tops of tables because their brains had never built the neural circuits to even perceive them. The takeaway here is huge. Opportunities, solutions, the path forward. It could be right in front of your face, but you literally cannot see it if your brain isn't wired to. So how do we build that wiring? It comes down to this really simple three-step process. First, forget the thing you want for a second and identify the feeling that thing will give you. Is it freedom, security, a sense of accomplishment? Step 2, make a list of all the proof you can find in your life right now that you already have reasons to feel that way. And step 3, brainstorm a list of things you can do today to generate even more of that feeling. And this isn't just some feel-good mental trick. This process literally retrains your brain. You start programming it to look for evidence of freedom or security or whatever it is. You become a neurological match for your goal, which allows you to finally see the pathways to get there that were completely invisible to you before. And this right here is the core idea of this whole explainer. This is the neuroscience behind manifestation. It's not about wishing for things. It's about actively, consciously wiring your brain to be able to perceive and create the reality that you're looking for. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. What invisible tabletops are you bumping into every day? What solutions, what people, what opportunities are just sitting there, waiting for you to do the work of wiring your brain to finally be able to see them? Thanks for tuning in.